I suspect everybody who can hear our voice right now realizes they could be an Auschwitz guard. This Milgram experiment, famous electroshock experiment, maybe you can explain that to everybody, is, I think, reflective of the fact that it's exceedingly rare, probably, that we cannot get into that groupthink mentality, the mass psychosis.
Well, look, that's part of the danger of the collective, right? Is that, well, you should serve your community and you should subordinate yourself to your community. Well, yes, but what if your community's wrong? Well, then you have to have the gall, and that would be associated with the capacity for malevolence, because to have that much gall, you need that capacity for malevolence to say no. But that's very difficult. Now, and that's allied with a virtue, right? The virtue is that we're consensus-building creatures, we're communitarian, we tend to go along with the crowd, which most of the time is the right thing to do. It's a virtue, but that is definitely also a danger. And, you think, well, how do you know when that danger is manifesting itself? And I would say, well, that's when the collective demands of you to do something that violates your conscience. But to do that properly, that means you've also had to have a dialogue with your conscience for a long time. In the Pinocchio movie, there's something very sophisticated about the Disney movie. That little cricket, JC, and those initials are not chance.
Oh my goodness. I didn't think about that till now.
Yes, Jiminy Cricket was a slang swear word alternative for Jesus Christ, yes. So, yes, and why? And you think, so a bug is Jesus Christ? It's like, yeah, because it bugs you. It's like, it's that still small voice, right, that says, maybe not. Okay, but so interesting, you see, in the movie, the cricket, and even though he's Christ, weirdly enough, he has to learn too as the movie progresses. There's a dialogue between Pinocchio and the conscience, and that's partly because your conscience in some ways is a generic voice, and it has to enter into a dialogue with you to become a particularized voice for you. And so you have to consult it and sharpen it by paying attention to it and interacting with it. And you can do that in partly by feeling. So when I'm speaking, I'm feeling my words. It's like, is that a solid word? Is that okay? Is that, or am I feeling fake about that word? That's a big thing. Is that word, am I trying to impress someone with that word? Or am I just trying to say what manifests itself to me at the moment as whatever truth I can manage? It's dialogue with your conscience and something to practice. And so that's part of what helps us cope with evil within. And it also tells us when we need to stand up against what society is doing. It's like, no, I can't say that. And in my country, there was a law a few years ago that was passed that mandated speech. There were certain forms of discourse that I was obliged to use. And I thought, I don't care what your reason is. I don't care what your reason is. I'm not saying what you want me to say. I'm going to say what I can step on and that will support me. And then I also thought, well, when the government is telling me what to say, then they've gone out of their bailiwick. And so, I didn't do it because I was brave. I don't think that's the reason at all. It was because I felt the consequences of not doing it would be worse. So it's partly being what I hope, afraid of the right thing. And so in that conscience that guides you, that's also the force that revitalizes society, because society becomes obsolete with time and it tends towards corruption, as the leftists constantly point out. Well, and people on the right as well who are afraid of big government, groups tend to some degree towards corruption, and they ossify if they don't change across time. And so the conscience that tells you when to resist the consensus is also the manifestation of the transformative force that keeps the collective alive. And so, well, you better have allegiance to that above all else, because everything fails. If everyone doesn't have allegiance to that, then everything turns into stone and we all perish of thirst. So, and that's not some, I could say, I was going to say that's not some fairy tale. So, yes, it is every fairy tale.
Exactly.
So, yes,
it's every fairy tale.
It is a fairy tale, but ignore it at your peril.
When you first read the Milbank experiment and realized that you could get, I don't know if it was everybody, but I think everybody in the study actually electroshocked the victim, the pretend victim.
Way up past the point of
lethality.
Yes.
So in this experiment, basically they got subjects, to kill the person that they were, they didn't realize it, but they were being told was opposite them because they did something wrong,
Yeah.
even if it wasn't something that was the person's fault.
Yeah. Well, it was a manipulative experiment in some sense, because, look, universities were trusted, and the authorities within universities were trusted, and the universities within the political system were essentially trusted, and that was all inside a polity that was actually functioning pretty well. So people had reason to be trusting. Then the psychologist put this weird, unexpected twist in it and said, well, us trustworthy people are going to demand of you something that's, unconscionable. And that's a hell of a lot for people to contend with in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. Because they have to, in some sense, comprehend a level of manipulativeness that's almost beyond comprehension. They have to do it almost instantaneously. And then the psychologist also dragged them along sort of step by step. So it's a hell of a thing to ask people to resist, especially when there was reason for trust. And you could contrast that, say, with the Nazi era or the Stalinist era, where people had every reason to distrust, and thousands of examples of that across time. And so that's a criticism of the experiment. The appreciation of it was, yeah, but look what you can get people to do. Right, so, there's lessons on both sides of that for psychologists and also for all of us.
Yeah.
Obedience, when does obedience become pathological? Well, I think the answer to that is, when what is demanded of you violates your conscience, assuming that you have a relatively pristine relationship with that conscience.
We seem moving towards an era when people they feel more like they're in a herd. The herd mentality that has allowed people to do things without much questioning that they probably wouldn't have done even a decade ago. And to my mind comes the broader acceptance that Marxism, communism, socialism might provide a better alternative to entrepreneurism. Mm-hmm. Something that was so foreign that you probably would have been prosecuted if you'd done it 50 years ago. Now it's being widely taught in schools. Is that true? How did that happen so quickly? And how does people get comfortable with ideas that are clearly destructive to the ones they're in? What makes them so miserable that they would accept that? Or is it bigger
some of
than
it
that?
is they do see what is perceived injustice. I mean, there is inequality, and the problem of inequality, let's say with regards to economic distribution, is a profound problem. And part of the reason that I don't appreciate the Marxist take, there's many, many reasons. It's a profoundly, what would you say, doesn't work at all, to say the least. It actually doesn't take the problem of inequality seriously enough.
How so?
Well, it's a real problem. I mean, this proclivity for more and more to end up in the hands of fewer and fewer people, that seems to be true of every system. And so it's a big problem. Well, look what happens when you play Monopoly. Well, what happens? The winner, gets everything and everyone else loses, right? And so you can even see that manifesting itself in small-scale systems. Mm-hmm. And so we're always battling, in some sense. Human beings always battle against this unbelievably deep proclivity. Physicists have even modeled the distribution of money using physical equations to account for the proclivity for all to be in the hands of one. The systems tend towards that across time. Now, the problem, of course, is that communist systems also have the same problem, right? Because if you look, say, in the Stalinist era, or through the entire history of the Soviet Union, it wasn't like there was a tiny minority of people at the top who had everything, just like in a capitalist system. And so when you say, well, Marxism would eradicate the problem of inequality, what you're failing to contend with is the depth of the problem of inequality. It's something that it's like a natural phenomenon, even a physical phenomenon. And so we have to take it seriously, because what it means is that there's going to be privation at the bottom. The poor will be with us always. Well, why? Well, that's this problem of inequality. And it's because as you get, let's say, money, getting more is easier. You know more people. You have more reach. Sure. More people know you. You get to a point where everything you do turns into money. And so advantage breeds advantage. And then by the same token, disadvantage breeds disadvantage, right? And so instead of going up like this and down like this, you go up like this and down like this. Right. And this is okay if that's you doing it, and we're all doing that collectively to some degree, because we're all getting richer very, very rapidly, collectively speaking. But this is a not so good thing at all, man. You know, when things go wrong, well, you get hurt, you get hit, you're a little weaker, just as susceptible to a blow, maybe more. You get another blow, it's like bang, 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 bang. Well, the limit of that is you're dead. And so this is a very serious problem. And the problem with the Marxist solution is that it doesn't address the problem. It doesn't take the problem seriously enough. And we don't know how to solve the problem. It's a very hard problem to solve.